You're listening to episode 4 of the Comic-Bookster podcast, your source for all things comics, past, present, and future.
Dragged from what could be any comic shop in the United States to host this incredibly nerdy podcast are some of the most enthusiastic comic book readers ever assembled. They are the Comic-Booksters, dedicated to discussing news, speculation, and recommendations for all comic buyers.
Welcome back to episode 4 of the Comic-Bookster podcast, where we talk about everything comics. Once again, I'm Nerdcore, and I'm joined by the Buzz Killington to my enthusiasm, Obi the Boy.
Welcome back to Comic-Booksters.
And this week we're joined by a friend of ours, the Ember, and we decided to let him here on the podcast to talk about free comic book day books. We'll cover these books and see what they were teasing and just let you know our general opinion on them. So I think we all read Civil War II, am I right on that?
Yep.
So, okay, let's see what we got. As far as what Civil War II covered, and before we get into this, I should warn everybody that there's going to be spoilers for all these free comic book day books, so if you are worried about that, come back later after you've read them. But we'll go ahead and start off with one of Marvel's offerings for free comic book day, which was Civil War II. As you know, a couple episodes, we talked at length about what we were looking at with Civil War II and what we kind of expected. So everything was confirmed. This Inhuman, he's an Inhuman, right? Am I correct? Ulysses?
Yeah, he's Ulysses.
Yeah. He can see the future. He visits with the other Inhumans. He pays a visit to the Ultimates, which are led by Captain Marvel, and figures out that Thanos is going to attack Project Pegasus. And War Machine and She-Hulk are at the very least seriously injured, if not dead. Pretty sure She-Hulk's alive.
Yeah, I think She-Hulk's probably alive. She got hit pretty hard, but she's She-Hulk, and she was certainly all together by the end of the issue, so I think she's going to be injured but alive. It's sort of less obvious with War Machine.
I think it's going to be just like the movie where he's disabled.
Well, isn't that something? Go figure that Marvel would tie into the movie that way. But with this, I got the distinct feeling now that this conflict is more going to hinge on the fact that Iron Man and Captain Marvel are going to be opposed because Rhodey got hurt in this incident. So now they wouldn't have been there if it had not been for Ulysses' visions. I feel like this is going to take on a much more personal note for Iron Man in this series. Anybody else get that vibe?
I don't know. I do know that they're doing a mini series for Ulysses. I do want to read that just to kind of get a backstory for that character and his vision, and maybe that'll lead a little bit more into Tony's feelings on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's not going to be that obvious because, I mean, they've already essentially done that storyline. So I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of things in this series that the preview just did not get to. I think it's going to be a lot more nuanced as to how the teams are going to line up.
Obviously, there's some more building, but I feel like Iron Man's going to get involved now that Rhodey's been injured at the very least, if not killed. So we'll see how that all shapes up. And we also got the debut of the all-new Wasp in the backup for the Civil War II for Comic Book Day issue. How are we feeling about that character?
I mean, I've always been a fan of the Wasp, and I'm sort of happy to see a new take on her in terms of what they seem to be doing. The action sequences, I don't know, maybe we're trying a little too hard. I thought there was a lot of splash, a lot of color, and not a lot of description in them that I could see. But, I mean, overall, I think the character definitely intrigued me.
What about you, Obi? What'd you get regarding the all-new
I don't know if I really like the new Wasp. I didn't really like her breaking into Pym's laboratory like that. It had like a sick feeling.
Okay. I'm more interested in what she's doing. I picked up All Different Avengers number 9 today, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I know that's going to focus on her. But, I mean, for most of the story, she's, as far as I can tell, inside the Vision's head.
Yeah.
Doing stuff. I don't know really what that stuff is.
Like, she was, like, in his eyes, I guess. There's some dialogue about wanting to be noticed. I guess that's one way to do it, is tiny bombs in his eyes.
But it doesn't make sense. I mean, if Hank Pym was really her hero, as she professes throughout this issue, and she's attacking the Avengers. I don't know if it's that she has something to prove, but as a reader, the logic kind of escapes me on why it's happening.
I think it'll tie into Civil War 2.
Quite possibly. Like I said, I know the latest issue of All New, All Different Avengers will focus on that, and we will find out just exactly what she is getting up to here. Maybe it's an audition. Who knows? Maybe we came midway through a story where she's trying out for the Avengers and she has to like neutralize certain members. But I guess time will tell. Once I'm able to read that issue, I'm sure we'll revisit the topic. Moving along, I think I got through a little bit more Free Comic Book Day issues than you guys did. We all have busy schedules and whatnot, and I was really trying to cram, but
I didn't really pick that many up.
But Captain America Steve Rogers had a special, and it tied in also with a backup story to the latest Spider-Man crossover of Dead No More. And this issue with Captain America, really interesting because, as you know, Steve is back carrying the shield. He's been powered back up again. Him and Sharon Carter, Sam Wilson, and the new Falcon are basically declaring war on Hydra. And there was an incident where they get distracted and they stop a massive attack in New York City, only for an attack in Europe to happen on a smaller scale. But still, the United Nations isn't very happy. Captain America goes to the United Nations and basically asks for a declaration of war on Hydra, which I think is a cool concept that they're actually formally declaring war on Hydra after they've been around for how many years.
Yeah, seems like a little late to the game, but...
And in the backup story, it seems that anybody for Dead No More is fair game, as far as Spider-Man characters are concerned. Off the top of my head, we get both the Rhino and his wife, Vanessa Fisk, Gwen Stacy, all of them are already back up and running, and it's coming down to the man who's responsible, who's in a red suit, and he's wearing a dog helmet. I'm assuming it's a new design on the Jackal, who was responsible for the Clone Saga in the Spider-Man books previously, 20 years ago, to much love or derision. It depends on which side of the line you fall on that. But so I'm not sure if we're going to be revisiting a lot of plot lines from that. It seems like we will, but lots of stuff going on at Marvel. I also picked up the DC offering, which was Suicide Squad #1 from September 2011, back at the launch of the New 52. And I'm gonna be honest with you, kind of disappointed that this is what DC put out for Free Comic Book Day. I thought maybe they'd try to hype up Rebirth a little bit more and maybe get a sneak peek at the Suicide Squad a bit. But I don't know. It's just a reprint of the first issue. As far as tying into the movie, you've got Harley Quinn, Deadshot, El Diablo, off the top of my head is what I can think of in the lineup. But, you know, it's not even the most recent volume of Suicide Squad that they're trying to, like, push out. This is, I believe, a volume or two ago. And to be quite honest, I wasn't a big fan of the issue when it came out. And now it just still doesn't really sit as well with me as some of the more recent stuff that they've done. And I don't know. We're all excited for Suicide Squad, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just don't think that, you know, pushing the Suicide Squad name by republishing an old issue in order to, I don't know, get popularity going. I don't know. I feel like they've been really reaching to make money on the Suicide Squad movie.
I think they would have even been better off if they were going to do something like this, reprinting an issue like the first issue of New Suicide Squad, because you'd still have Harley, you'd still have Deadshot. It's a little more recent. I think that the first issue of that was a better book, or even, you know, maybe going back and republishing the first issue of the Ostrander run. Even though you lack Harley Quinn, you still get Deadshot and Captain Boomerang and Rick Flag. But I don't know. I would have preferred one of those two issues be republished than this issue of Suicide Squad, unfortunately.
This brings up an interesting question that I had for Free Comic Book Day in general. Do you think it's actually worth it?
As a former shop owner or for publishers?
For publishers.
I mean, they're making money on their books, and I guess this doing a reprint on something like Suicide Squad #1 is more cost effective than putting out new promo materials. I find that there's a lot of people, when I used to own a comic book store, who would come in and pick up things on Free Comic Book Day and then would come back in the subsequent weeks and ask, you know, is this book out? I read about this on Free Comic Book Day. I was interested in it. Is there a series that I can, you know, touch base on to keep up with it? So I think as far as comic book stores and publishers are concerned, it is worth it when you're promoting new materials. But, this is not the Suicide Squad book that you're going to be picking up when you go into a comic book store. You're going to be, for the next month, it's new Suicide Squad, and then you have DC Rebirth Suicide Squad that's coming out. So they might be serving it to, hype up the movie, but it's not really so much going to be what you're getting when you buy a Suicide Squad comic at this point.
I was actually talking to my wife about this on the way over here, and we were talking about how 4 years ago, Marvel, DC, like everything they put out was solid for Free Comic Book Day. It was lackluster at best for this one.
I think Marvel was more on the ball than DC.
Not compared to 4 years ago. Not even close. It was alright. They had previews, but it wasn't the same. They did solid stuff in the years past, and this year they literally dropped the ball. And if you have the two biggest publishers not caring about it...
Well, they got me more interested in Civil War 2, I'll say that. And I was going to be reading Steve Rogers' Captain America regardless. But, I even got a little bit more interested in Dead No More. So they've covered, like, 3 of their bigger books that they're doing, at least with Marvel. Honestly, Obi, I can't really comment on Free Comic Book Day 4 years ago. I know, I was running a shop at that time and I ordered books for it. Frankly, I can't remember what came out.
I can tell you just from like going to shops for years beforehand and 4 years ago, like the last couple of Free Comic Book Days have been just not good. They're just bad. It's like the two big publishers just don't care because they're not making money, so they don't care.
Yeah, well, they're charging, upwards of maybe 25 cents a book tops. So that might be why we're getting shorter issues and reprints and whatnot. That's could very well be why they don't care. But yeah, it was kind of a lackluster Free Comic Book Day, and this DC offering wasn't really what I thought was up to snuff. And I guess it does speak to the quality of Free Comic Book Day the past couple of years that I can't remember, what books came out. So
yeah, so that's my big thing. Like I didn't like Free Comic Book Day. I remember back in like 2008, 2009, I used to take off work to make sure I could go to Free Comic Book Day.
Not anymore.
Yeah, last week I had to figure out how to get out of work.
So you don't remember you even remember what came out last year?
No, Marvel only put out 1 last year, if I remember correctly. DC had 3. DC actually had another comic book that came out, but the shop that we go to didn't get it, which was the DC Superhero Girls.
Right. Actually, they did have it when I was up there. I just forgot to pick it up, unfortunately. I should have snagged one for you.
It's just a topic I wanted to bring up because I feel like it's really gone downhill. I mean, so for some of the smaller publishers, they put out some good stuff, I guess, but I have no interest in indie books. Really hard for me to jump into an indie book.
That's the thing. Like, I picked up a bunch of books on the indie side, and I'll go over some of the ones that I read here, but it wasn't stuff that I would normally pick up, honestly. But I decided to give it a try because I wanted to talk about Free Comic Book Day. But it is really a shame because back when we were getting solid releases for Free Comic Book Day, that helps bring people into comic book stores. And if they're disappointed with the selection that they're getting, how long is that going to be sustainable for them? Because Free Comic Book Day, quite frankly, is the busiest day of the year for most comic shops. Anything else we want to cover as far as how Free Comic Book Day is progressing?
I wouldn't say progressing. It's degressing or whatever that word.
Regressing.
Regressing. That's it.
All right. Next up, I would like to touch on what I think was the book that I got and enjoyed the most on Free Comic Book Day, which is the reprint of the first issue of Archie by Mark Waid and Fiona Staples. Now, Mark Waid did the all different Avengers backup in the Civil War 2 book, but he also did the Archie #1, and he writes that series on a regular basis for Archie Comics. Fiona Staples does the art on Saga and is really great about it. And I think it's just, it's a modernization of Archie, certainly, but it still feels like Archie. I really wish Mark Waid was working on Rebirth, actually, because he's one of those writers that really knows how to capture the core and the essence of a property when he works on it. And, I mean, this really just speaks volumes with Archie because it's definitely a new visual, but the storylines, it's definitely a modern take, but it keeps that vibe that Archie is so great for. It's just all the dialogue's realistically written. It looks great. There's a Jughead backup. Never huge into Archie, but I'm actually considering now, picking up any collection that they do, and then maybe getting the single issues, because I was highly impressed.
I mean, it was Mark Waid, so
Well.
there's a certain level of comic book experience you're expecting out of the books.
Yeah,
It's not like he drops the ball often or
No.
all.
Mark Waid's great, one of my favorite writers in the comics industry. Next up, I believe you read at least one story out of this one, Obi. Am I correct?
Yeah, the Dark Horse one. I read the Hellboy story.
You read the Hellboy story. I read all three. Dark Horse had released Serenity with backups for Hellboy, and I believe, what is the
Aliens.
Aliens Defiance is what it is. Which the Serenity story is by Chris Roberson, art by Stephen Byrne, and as a fan of Firefly, I really enjoyed it. It's just a bedtime story that River is telling to Zoe's daughter about how Zoe met Wash, but it's in the context of a tale of a warrior meeting the wind. Really beautiful, poetic stuff. Lots of shots at Alan Tudyk's mustache. So, but it's a fun read. Pulls at the heartstrings a little bit. The Hellboy story I really enjoyed. It is written by Mike Mignola. Art's by Richard Corbin, who I love. I'm a big fan of Den. So, Richard Corbin art. He's also adapted a number of Edgar Allan Poe stories. It just fits Hellboy like a glove. It's a short tale, as you can attest. Tell us what it's about there, Obi.
Oh, it's a story of Hellboy that is. He doesn't remember a lot of things from his childhood, but he remembers this one story about a mirror and how a lady was supposedly haunted by this mirror, if I remember correctly.
No, I think she. I just read it this morning.
She got
She was practicing witchcraft.
Yeah, she was hanging out with demons, and the town basically called her a witch, and they trapped her in a mirror. And then he goes to the mirror, looks into the mirror, and then the demons try to pull his skin off. It's really, you have to see the art because it's so good.
Richard Corbin does horror excellently, but it's great. I really like it. It's just a nice, short, creepy tale that's really suitable for any horror aficionado. And then our last story in there, by Brian Wood, art by Tristan Jones, is the new Aliens Defiance series. At this point, it's standard Aliens fare to me. Like it's just trapped on a ship, and there's aliens, and how do we get them out? How do we survive? So Brian Wood's a great writer. It keeps it keeps your interest as a reader, but to me, it's nothing that you haven't really seen before, unfortunately. IDW put out ROM issue 0 for Free Comic Book Day. Apparently, Rom returns to Earth in pursuit of the dire wraiths, which is the entire premise of the Rom comic book. He's looking to wipe them out after having won the war against them. There's a couple renegade cells on the run. I've never been a huge Rom guy, and I like Chris Ryall, but frankly, I'm just not my cup of tea. So if you're nostalgic for Rom, I do recommend that you give it a shot. But I've never quite been able to get into it. I guess we'll just move right along from this.
Yeah, I can't speak much to Rom.
What was a pleasant surprise is that I'm not a big manga guy, but they did release from Viz Media One Punch Man, Free Comic Book Day special. It's a short little tale. It seems fun. He's a superhero who literally is fighting crime for fun, is what he says. And he is opposed by a giant alien that thinks that humans are bacteria that are destroying the universe, and that One Punch Man is the worst of them all. And that is literally the entire story. It's just huge splash pages. It definitely gives you the vibe about what One Punch Man is about. So if you're looking for something fun and you enjoy manga, recommend checking it out. Not sure if I'm going to keep with it because it's hard for me to read books backwards. I can't seem to put two and two together with it. Because not only are you flipping the pages the opposite way, but you're technically reading from right to left with your word bubbles, and it just really messes with my flow. But
well, I mean, as someone who's read a lot of manga and who's used to reading manga, when I first heard about One Punch Man, I thought it was a joke. I didn't know it was actually a published medium, and actually my first experience with One Punch Man as an actual medium was on Free Comic Book Day, so I'm actually looking forward to reading that book, although I haven't been able to yet.
All right. So, you read
Avatar X.
All right, tell me about it, man.
Avatar X is a story of, we're just going to call him an avatar. It's a godlike being who is supposed to come down to protect the Earth, but he thinks he's like all powerful, and there's kind of like a ghost in his head, not like a conscience. There's something there that's telling him what to do, kind of like a conscience, but not that. It controls his actions, but he has no control over what it says because he's like, I'm gonna go over there down to Earth and I'm gonna make it what I want it to be, and they're like, and it is like basically telling him the whole time, you can't just go down and do what you want to do. They're gonna resist. They're not gonna just listen to you because that's what they do. And that's like that. There's a whole. That's basically the whole thing. He wakes up and they have this argument in his head as he's staring down at Earth.
And who's the writer on that?
Grant Morrison.
Of course it is. Anybody good doing the art?
I don't know who's doing the art, but there was a backup for Morrison's 18 Days, which is a retelling of, I don't remember what religion it is, but it has to do with all kinds of avatars. So that's going to be a graphic novel that I don't think it ties into Avatar X. It might, but that's a separate thing he's doing. But there was a backup for that in there too. Even again, it was Morrison, so it was written really well.
And Ember, you, speaking of avatars,
Yes,
looked into Legend of Korra.
absolutely. I've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender from the premiere all the way through the finale of Korra, so it was actually the first thing I asked for when I went to Free Comic Book Day. And it was a short story. It was in that style that Avatar has, disarmingly adorable, followed by unexpected emotion. And the basic story behind the Free Comic Book Day of Korra was the story of how she meets Naga as a kid. And that really sums up the essence of it, in that, there's some training with Katara shown that wasn't shown before. It's an era of Korra's life that wasn't shown before. A little more of her parents, and then the meeting with Naga, and it actually wraps up to a nice, pretty emotional ending. So I don't think it's going to be like a continued series. I think it was meant to be sort of a one-shot. I would love to see more of younger Korra and things like that, but I'm not sure how much they could do because of the way that they worked that in. But it was just a really great story to read. It was perfect for the day. So I really enjoyed it.
Well, Dark Horses has a history of putting out really quality continuations and tie-in stories to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I was reading. I haven't watched all of Legend of Korra yet, so I haven't read any of those books, but if it's anything like what they were doing with Last Airbender, then I would expect it to be phenomenal. So
It was quite good.
So if you're into, the Avatar series, the cartoon, Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, not the James Cameron Blue Cat People Dances with Wolves, Dark Horse is your place to go if you want some continuations. Just really quality stuff coming out of there.
Oh yeah.
Anybody have anything else that they want to say in regards to Free Comic Book Day with books, or the status of Free Comic Book Day?
Hopefully it changes for next year, but I don't think it's going to. I think you're just going to keep seeing this drop off.
And do you think that's just because they're trying to give a very small sampling to sell a new book, or sell a tie-in movie, or just because they're not seeing enough profit?
I don't think they're seeing the profit out of it on the back end.
And that's really what it comes down to. It's comics, it's an industry, it's all about the money at the end of the day, and as long as you're supporting it, they're going to keep doing what works for them.
Yeah, I really think the essence of Free Comic Book Day is maybe ironically less what the publishers are giving us and more what we make out of it. Because, I know for the local comic shops and for everybody going, it's a really great event. You get to see some previews that are, hopefully not just rehashings of Suicide Squad. And it's really just a good opportunity to get together and talk about what's coming up and what they're trying to promote, really, for the rest of the year.
It really is. Running into customers in a pack store, you get an opportunity to interact with people that you don't normally get all the time, because normally when I go to the comic shop, there's not a lot of people there, or they're just running in and out real quick. But with an event like this, you at least get to talk to people in the community.
Yeah,
which is always nice.
I think that part of it, besides just like the drop off on books, is especially the two big ones, have put such an emphasis on their movie universe that they're afraid to show people the non-comic readers the comic side, because some of them aren't the same as they are in the movies.
Yeah, that's very true. There's some big differences between
That's a whole nother topic for another day. But I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Well, I, for one, am going to remain optimistic and hope that maybe we have a turnaround on Free Comic Book Day, because it's something that I don't want to see go away, because I think in the long run it is great for the industry as far as either hooking new readers or getting readers to pick up something that they normally wouldn't. So I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, and I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Comic-Booksters. Once again, I'm Nerdcore, and for Obi and Ember, happy reading.
Keep reading.
Keep reading.
Thanks again for tuning into the Comic Bookster podcast. We would love to hear from you with feedback and suggestions. You can send those to us by email at thecomicbooksters@gmail.com or on Twitter @comicbooksters. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. So long, everybody.